most of these metrics are indeed lagging. I just looked at my methodology. Out of the 127, 92 are leading. Like, so I have 92 leading metrics that will show, hey, this is going down, watch out, right? Now, in and of itself, if one of those 92 fires or goes down, it's not a disaster, but it's definitely a signal, right? So if one of those decreases over time, you have been warned, and you should know better as the human in the loop that will show what you need to do. So definitely something that is what's the word I'm looking for? An aid to make sure that you keep your clients and you don't lose them.
Your business's success depends on relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl. Each week I bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week I'm excited to connect with Boy Hijnen. He is the Chief of Client Yield at Vantum Advisory Group and creator of the Client Yield methodology. He helps companies capture the revenue sitting inside their existing client base by treating it as a single ownable outcome. His work centers on the idea that existing clients are a growth engine, not maintenance. Congrats on the Client Yield methodology, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thank you, Karl. I am honored and happy to join.
Great. Yeah, and I'm really excited to have you on because this concept is something that, there's plenty of data that shows how much easier it is to retain clients and then find new ones. And yet companies seem to not invest as much or see client success or those relationship building skills as a revenue option. And they see it as just like, oh, these are expenses or these are like things to automate. So how do you see what's your better method, or explain the method and like what companies can do to understand that their relationships are worth a lot of money that they're often neglecting?
So, good question. I think what I realized in my career is that most clients or most companies are looking to grow. Growth, unfortunately, has become synonymous with landing new logos, right? If you want more growth, you need to land new clients. But as you probably know, Karl, is that the cost of acquisition of clients, is also known as CAC, has increased considerably. So it costs a lot more to get those new clients, and the payback period just gets longer and longer and longer. Whereas if you treat your existing clients as a growth engine, you will get a similar amount of growth at a fraction of the cost it would be for you to land new ones. And I've found a way that getting additional revenue from existing clients is based on 3 outcomes: retention lift, expansion lift, and referral yield. Right? So those are the 3 outcomes that you can get from your existing clients. So better retention, more expansion, and more referrals. Those in and of itself will generate more revenue than if you treat them as flat, or if you service them, or if you maintain them. But if you manage them as a whole system, all of a sudden the growth will come from the clients you already have. And then you can still go out to the market and get new clients. But then guess what? Instead of using them to paint over churn on the back end, they are a flywheel that will generate even more revenue if you apply the same system to your just newly won clients as the ones you already have.
Yeah, and I love that mindset shift because so many companies, especially the larger ones, have very siloed like marketing, sales, and client relationships, and those often have different metrics for success, and it leads to this disjointed experience for the clients, which makes it harder to retain them. And they're still going out and talking. And when someone who's potentially a new client you've been working so hard to bring in talks to an existing one or a previous one and goes, well, what was it like? And they start telling all these horror stories about the difficulties of being your client, then you could be losing new deals because of how you're not taking care of your existing clients and who soon become former clients. So the getting and seeing the client success or the relationship building side of things as this is a way for us to generate more revenue and save a lot less expensively than acquiring new clients makes a whole lot of sense. And it seems like such a missed opportunity and for a lot of companies. And I think it's more of like a systems and thinking problem rather than an actual like skills problem from the team setting.
Yep. One thing that I didn't touch on, which I tend to do as well, is when I say, again, retention lift, expansion lift, and referral yield, those three together make sure that you get additional revenue from clients, but they tend to sit at different functions. Retention sits with client services, expansion sits with sales, and referrals, you tell me. That means that if none of those talk, you get disparate outcomes, right? But if you manage it again as a whole system, all of a sudden, you can get a lot more out of it. But it requires you to think about this differently, which is, and I don't know if you're a baseball fan, but I came up with this concept of why can we not, in this day and age when there's so much data available and with the power of AI, why can we not use a lot of these or a lot of metrics to determine where things are going well and where things are going wrong? So my system, client yield, is basically a Moneyball-style metric system, 127 underlying levers that will show you exactly how your relationships are doing. It will be signaled, and this will apply to you, Karl, because without humans, a signal is just a signal, right? The signal is there to tell you what needs to happen. But no machine can do that with a client yet. You need humans to act on the signals. So the signal is there as a way to see what's going on with your clients, but then it needs human interaction on the owner side to say, okay, we need to reach out to this client to do X, Y, Z, whatever the output is of the 127 metrics, which is therefore aligned with what you do, human to human.
Yeah, because it's one thing to know and see these indicators, and unfortunately, a lot of the existing dashboards that client management or client success are using are basically, they're like lagging metrics. They're like the problem's already happened, or the things are like they've already made the decision to churn or to leave and stuff. So and you need to be able to either have different metrics that are leading metrics that give you indications on things you can do to save an account or build a relationship, rebuild a relationship. But then also you need to be able to do things in a way that's not just another mass templated email out to a bunch of people that happen to hit these certain metrics. You want to be able to go out there and build a more holistic relationship with people and see that some of the things that are probably causing them to consider churning are nothing to do with the vendor part of your relationship. It's about other things going on in their business. But if you can be the one to give them the referrals or the connections to help them solve those problems by listening and understanding and offering to help, even though it's outside of its official scope of the transaction they're doing with you, then that saves your relationship, because you're treating it not just as a line item or an expense or as like a non-human element of like the transactional part of the relationship, but you're seeing it as, I want to help you out because we have a connection on a deeper level, and I see you as someone who I want you to succeed. I want your business to succeed, so I'm going to go above and beyond. And that kind of human element is something that the AI is not going to be able to do.
You said something else that was that is very true. Most of these metrics are indeed lagging. I just looked at my methodology. Out of the 127, 92 are leading. Like, so I have 92 leading metrics that will show, hey, this is going down, watch out, right? Now, in and of itself, if one of those 92 fires or goes down, it's not a disaster, but it's definitely a signal, right? So if one of those decreases over time, you have been warned, and you should know better as the human in the loop that will show what you need to do. So definitely something that is a what's the word I'm looking for? An aid to make sure that you keep your clients and you don't lose them, but on a human level.
Yeah, and it's something that I've talked about this recently on one of the episodes that came out recently. That there's just in general the approach to client success and maintaining those relationships is backwards, because there's a kind of a coverage problem where one rep will have 60 accounts they're trying to service, and there's just no way they can go deep enough with any of them to really make use of even those sort of metrics, even the leading ones, because they can't handle it all, or they can't handle it to the depth they need to on the human to human side of things to really turn things around. Even if they see that the leading metrics things are going sideways, the systems they're working are not set up to give them the space and the time to go deep and solve it. And so I think it's having the framework like that you're talking about, where you have these leading metrics, but also thinking about it, if you mentioned like who's in charge of this stuff, having like some of the people on sales, some people on client success are kind of having how you manage the accounts, how many people are responsible for a single account, or how many like accounts for a single person needs to shift, because they need to be able to have the deep discussions, the uncomfortable ones that aren't or seem like they might be risking the relationship, but actually they're what saves it. Because if you don't have those difficult conversations when you see those leading metrics, you can't get in front of it. And so not only does the metrics need to change, and having the kind of unsiloing the client success from sales and from marketing, but you also need to have the space to go deep and the time to go deep with these relationships.
That I mean, this will probably ring true to you, Karl. Current clients and servicing them are still seen to be a cost center, which means you need to cut costs, right? Which then means one person or one account manager or one client service person has to have at least 60 or 70 clients to become cost effective. But that is definitely a risk, because if they don't get to do the quality work to unearth whatever is in those available clients, it just becomes maintenance and servicing and just doing the bare necessity, with the risk of them walking out the door at the end of their contract or before that, right? Instead of treating them again as the growth engine that they are, and they need to get the relevant attention from those people assigned to them to get there. But that does require a different view of how will you manage your existing clients, because if you are going to do it like from a cost center perspective, this is the outcome, right? I've seen this firsthand. I thought I could get more out of my existing clients by giving me less. My management thought, yeah, but this is your cost and this is what we get in, so you need to do more. The results are there. So I totally agree with you on that point. As if people keep seeing this as a cost center, then yeah.
So what do you think is where does this change need to happen? It sounds like it's up in like the upper management needs to kind of reframe the way they think about client success and see it as a revenue. But how do you get that? How do you make that change happen? Because it seems like everyone is so kind of cost averse and risk averse these days that proposing that kind of shift is going to be tricky. So what do you recommend if someone's listening who's at a company that has this sort of sees client success as the cost center and they want to try and pivot it to this is a revenue source? We need to treat it the same way we treat and invest in the same way we invest in sales and marketing. What does that pivot look like, and how do you get that shift started?
It starts with the ones that are responsible for revenue, right? So I guess there are many people who are responsible for revenue, but it starts with the founder, the CEO, and the other C-suite, most likely the COO and the CRO, depending on the size of the company. And then it's a matter of looking at things differently, because to my earlier point, this is how it has been done. But we all know that how it has been done is why we are where we are, right? So it does require a reframe. That means willing to look in the mirror and say, hey, could this be a more effective way of doing things? And that's why I use the example of CAC, or cost of acquiring new clients. That continues to rise. But if you do the calculation of what are we doing here really? Are we getting new clients to paint over the fact that we're losing clients at the back end? It, to me, sounds not the smartest of ways, because then you're just painting over what's really happening in your business. Whereas if you look at your business and use that as the base for everything, then I'm biased because this is what I do, but then the only way to do it is make sure that what you have, you maximize, and then whatever else you get in is in addition. But that does require a change of approach. And it all starts with, do these people want to look in the mirror and say, we can do this better? And that brings me to a quote that I think came from Tony Robbins, which, and I wrote it down, but is the cost, what is it? You won't change unless the cost of staying the same, or the cost of staying the same is more than the cost of changing. So it's probably something that will have to happen gradually. But if you see that those cost of acquisition keeps rising and you don't see the returns, then at some point you're going to realize, why don't we focus more on what we already have? But yeah, it ends up being with the revenue responsible. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I think it's a matter, of convincing. If you're someone who's inside who's wants to convince, or like going to get the people on board for this sort of shift, yeah, showing the rising cost of acquisition and the kind of diminishing returns on their ability to paint over the churn rates, and also look at those metrics and really contrasting where their money is currently going versus how much they're actually getting back from it versus the potential for making this shift. Then that can help solidify the change. But it is, they do have to be feeling that pinch, and unfortunately it's like the runway to be able to make that shift needs to be long enough, because you're still building these relationships, which takes some time. And the speed at which people can build trust as a human being is often a lot slower than businesses would prefer, which is kind of also what leads to this situation where companies are trying to push the sale faster and faster, which makes it, they don't get as many closes because they're not doing it as well as they could. But if your company needs to fix some revenue issues because of a lot of churn, then if you don't give yourself the time to build these relationships and save these accounts, then you're still going to be in trouble because you're going to have a cash flow issue. So waiting until it's the cost of change is higher or lower than the cost of staying the same might be too late to make any shifts like that. So that is unfortunately kind of what it often takes for companies. So I think it's often easier if you're like a scaling company who's kind of still building some systems, don't have kind of established ways of doing things as you're scaling up, just to avoid that problem altogether and build and allocate your team and the budget and the focus the right way the first time, instead of trying to pivot a team and a company that's already been kind of building these bad habits for so long. Because there's also just the human element of change management that's really complicated and difficult. And so even if the leadership team decides, hey, we're going to make this shift, the time between like making the shift, like making the call and then turning the wheel and the boat actually moving is not an instantaneous thing. So I think it's another one of the factors that, as the strain on businesses continues to increase due to the overall economic situation and just the market forces. The companies that are less agile, can't adapt quickly, are going to be struggling a lot more because the demands or kind of needs of the market are going to be outpacing their ability to change in time. So I think it's very interesting in that regard.
No, I totally agree with that one. I would say, or I would add or amplify, however you want to call it, that if you don't have a solid base, this is going to be a risky time, because things do need to change, and the solid base will help you to at least continue what you're doing, right? But if that base is not solid, then the likelihood of disruption is going to be larger.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Boy. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please leave a review, and subscribe. If you want to learn more about myself or Boy, check out the links in the show notes. And no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.